Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into velvet slippers, tiptoeing past flickering torches and entering a drafty stone castle where the air smells like beeswax, damp limestone, and something suspiciously herbal. You're about to be born, not just as a baby, but as a medieval princess. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. Infant mortality in the Middle Ages is no joke, and being royal doesn't guarantee a long life, just a more ceremonial death. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born in a castle that's more fortress than fairy tale. The walls are thick, the windows are slits, and the room where your mother labors is filled with incense, chanting priests, and a midwife who's seen too much. Your birth is not just a family event, it's a dynastic announcement. The moment your gender is confirmed, a messenger gallops off to inform the court. If you're a girl, the mood is complicated. Relief, disappointment, and a flurry of recalculations ripple through the nobility. Your name isn't chosen for beauty or whimsy. It's selected to honor treaties, appease rival houses, or echo the name of a saint who allegedly performed miracles involving childbirth. You're swaddled tightly, so tightly, in fact, that your limbs are straightened like little sticks. Medieval people believed this helped shape your body properly. Historians still argue whether swaddling was protective or borderline torture. Either way, you're bundled like a burrito and handed off to a wet nurse. This wet nurse isn't just any woman. She's been vetted for her morals, her health, and her husband's reputation. Her diet is monitored, her behavior scrutinized. If she's caught drinking ale or gossiping too much, she's replaced. You spend more time with her than with your actual mother, who's recovering from childbirth and is already being pressured to produce another heir. Your nursery is a curious mix of luxury and discomfort. There are tapestries on the walls, but they don't stop the drafts. The cradle is carved from oak and lined with wool, but rats scurry across the floor at night. A servant sleeps nearby to keep the fire going and to check your breath every few hours. Infant death is so common that people don't even name babies until they're a few weeks old. You're referred to as the little one or the child until you've proven you're sticking around. Religious rituals surround your early days. You're baptized quickly, sometimes within hours of birth, because if you die unbaptized, your soul might not reach heaven. A priest sprinkles holy water on your tiny forehead, while nobles gather in solemn silence. A candle is lit, prayers are whispered, and your godparents are chosen not for their spiritual guidance, but for their political clout.
You're also subject to a host of superstitions. A sprig of rosemary might be hung above your cradle to ward off evil spirits. Your nurse might mutter charms while rocking you. If you cry too much, someone blames the alignment of the stars. If you sleep too soundly, they worry you've been cursed. One fringe belief involves placing a piece of bread under your pillow to absorb bad dreams. You don't get a say in any of this. You just lie there, swaddled and slightly confused. Despite the discomforts, you're treated like a treasure. Servants bow when they enter your room. Your linens are embroidered with your family crest. You're weighed, measured, and occasionally sniffed by curious courtiers who want to report back on your health. If you sneeze, someone declares it a good omen. If you hiccup, someone fetches a priest. Your mother visits you occasionally, dressed in layers of velvet and fur. She holds you stiffly, as if unsure what to do with a creature so small and politically significant. She whispers lullabies in Latin, strokes your cheek, and then hands you back to the nurse. Her job is to produce heirs, not raise them. Meanwhile, your father is busy negotiating alliances, hosting feasts, and pretending he's not disappointed you weren't a boy. He commissions a miniature portrait of you to send to distant relatives. The artist paints you with rosy cheeks, golden curls, and eyes that look suspiciously adult. Accuracy isn't the goal. Symbolism is. As you grow, your survival becomes a quiet triumph. Each month you live is a victory. You're still swaddled, still watched, but now you're starting to smile, babble, and reach for things. Your nurse beams with pride. Your mother nods approvingly. Your father starts considering which noble house might want you as a future bride. And so your life begins, not as a child, but as a symbol. Your princess, born into a world where your value is measured in treaties, your body is shaped by superstition, and your future is already being negotiated behind closed doors.
You're still tiny, still swaddled, but now you're more than just a bundle of dynastic hope. You're a living, breathing creature with needs, moods, and a surprisingly loud cry. Your days are structured like a monk's, with feeding times, nap times, and ritual blessings. You're watched constantly, not just for health, but for signs of divine favor. Did you smile at the priest? That's a good omen. Did you spit up on the embroidered cushion? Someone will interpret that as a warning from Saint Margaret. Your wet nurse remains your closest companion. She's not just feeding you, she's shaping your temperament. Medieval thinkers believed that a nurse's personality could be transferred through her milk. If she's cheerful, you'll be cheerful. If she's melancholy, well, better hope she's not. Historians still argue whether this belief had any real basis or was just another excuse to micromanage women's lives. Either way, your nurse is under constant scrutiny. You're dressed in layers of linen and wool, even in summer. The castle is cold year-round, and no one wants a royal baby catching a chill. Your clothes are hand-stitched, often dyed with saffron or madder root, and fastened with tiny brass pins. You look regal, but you're also itchy. The wool scratches, the pins poke, and you've already developed a preference for being held upright. Your cradle is more throne than bed. It's carved with lions, griffins, and your family's crest. It rocks gently, but only under supervision. No one wants you to roll out and hit your head on the stone floor. A servant is assigned to guard your sleep. She sits nearby, spinning wool or whispering prayers, occasionally checking your breath with a feather held under your nose. The room itself is dim. lit by rushlights and a small fire. The walls are hung with tapestries depicting saints, battles, and mythical beasts. You stare at them often, your eyes wide with wonder. One fringe theory suggests that medieval infants were overstimulated by such imagery, leading to vivid dreams and early imagination. You, however, seem mostly fascinated by the one-eyed griffin. Religious rituals continue to shape your early life. You're anointed with oil on feast days, blessed with relics during illness, and occasionally taken to chapel for special prayers. The priest sprinkles holy water on your forehead while muttering Latin incantations. You don't understand any of it, but you do enjoy the echo of his voice in the stone chamber. Your health is a constant concern. You're given herbal tonics made from fennel, chamomile, and sometimes ground pearls. If you cough, someone fetches a physician who smells like garlic and carries a pouch of dried frog legs. He examines you with solemn gravity, declares you temperate, and recommends more swaddling. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds uncomfortable. You're also subject to medieval diagnostics. Your urine is examined in glass vials, your stool is discussed in hushed tones, and your skin tone is compared to medieval charts of humoro-balance. If you're too pale, you're considered phlegmatic. Too red, choleric. Too yellow, well, no one likes yellow. Historians still debate whether these diagnoses helped or harmed more children than they saved. Despite all this, you're thriving. You've started to babble, reach for shiny objects, and kick your legs with surprising force. Your nurse beams with pride. Your mother visits more often, bringing small gifts, a carved rattle, a silver spoon, a miniature book of prayers. She holds you gently, whispers lullabies, and then retreats to our chambers to prepare for another pregnancy. Your father begins to take notice. He watches you from a distance, nods approvingly when you smile, and occasionally allows you to sit on his lap during court gatherings. You're dressed in your finest gown, your hair brushed and scented with rosewater. Nobles coo over you, comment on your resemblance to your grandmother, and speculate about your future marriage prospects. You're not even 2. You're also beginning to understand routine. You recognize your nurse's voice, the sound of the chapel bell, and the smell of the firewood. You cry when the fire goes out, laugh when the cat jumps on your cradle, and show a distinct dislike for boiled turnips. Your preferences are noted, discussed, and occasionally ignored. Your nursery becomes a hub of activity. Servants come and go, bringing food, linens, and news. A musician plays a lute to soothe you. A jester performs clumsy tricks that make you giggle. A visiting noblewoman offers you a carved wooden horse, which you promptly chew on. Everyone wants to be seen caring for the princess. It's good politics. You're also beginning to be watched for signs of intelligence. Do you respond to music? Do you mimic gestures? Do you show curiosity? One fringe belief suggests that royal children were tested by placing a mirror in front of them. If they recognized themselves, they were destined for greatness. You mostly try to lick the mirror. Your nurse begins teaching you simple gestures, how to wave, how to fold your hands in prayer, how to point to the Virgin Mary on the tapestry. These are not just cute tricks, they're early etiquette lessons. You're being groomed to perform, to impress, to embody grace before you can even walk. And so your early years unfold in a haze of rituals, surveillance, and velvet. You're cherished, yes, but also curated. Every smile is a symbol, every cry a concern. You're not just growing, you're being sculpted.
You're 3 now, maybe 4, and your nursery has evolved into a miniature court. The cradle's gone, replaced by a small bed with carved posts and embroidered sheets. You sleep beneath a canopy stitched with stars and saints, though the draft still sneaks in through the stone walls. You've learned to pull the covers tight and tuck your feet in like your nurse taught you, because cold toes are the enemy. Your days begin with ritual. A servant wakes you gently, murmuring prayers as she opens the shutters to let in the pale morning light. You're dressed in layers, linen chemise, woolen kirtle, and a velvet surcoat in indigo or russet depending on the season. Your hair is brushed with a boar bristle comb and scented with lavender water. You don't get to choose your outfit, but you do get to choose your ribbon color. Today, it's saffron. Breakfast is served in your chamber. A bowl of pottage, a slice of bread, and watered wine. You're still too young for strong drink, but wine is considered safer than water. Historians still argue whether this was genuinely protective or just a medieval excuse to start drinking early. Either way, you sip politely and try not to spill on your surcoat. Your nurse is still with you, but now she's joined by a governess, a stern woman with a fondness for Latin and a deep distrust of giggling. She oversees your lessons, which begin with prayers and end with posture drills. You're taught to sit straight, fold your hands, and never, ever slouch. Slouching is for peasants. You're royalty, and your spine must reflect that. The nursery is filled with objects meant to shape your mind and soul. There are carved saints, painted alphabets, and a tiny harp you're expected to practice daily. You pluck at it with mild resentment, dreaming of throwing it out the window. One fringe theory suggests that royal children often developed secret hiding spots for disliked toys. You've already stashed a particularly creepy doll behind the tapestry. You're also learning to read. Sort of. Your books are illuminated manuscripts, heavy and ornate, filled with saints, beasts, and moral lessons. You trace the letters with your finger, repeat phrases after your governess, and occasionally ask why the lion is wearing a crown. She doesn't answer. You suspect she doesn't know. Etiquette is drilled into you like a second language. You practice curtsies, greetings, and how to walk without tripping over your hem. You're taught to speak softly, smile politely, and never interrupt. If you forget, you're corrected gently but firmly. One time, you burped during a feast rehearsal and were sent to sit in the corner with a bowl of cold porridge. You never burp again. Your chamber is a curious blend of comfort and caution. The tapestries are beautiful, but hide cracks in the walls. The fire is warm, but must be watched constantly. The toys are luxurious, but often too delicate to play with. You're surrounded by beauty, but it's the kind that demands reverence, not joy. You're also beginning to understand your role. You're not just a child, you're a symbol. When visiting nobles arrive,
You're dressed in your finest and paraded through the hall. You smile, curtsy, and recite a line of Latin. Everyone claps. You're praised for your poise, your grace, your resemblance to your grandmother. You're 4. You'd rather be chasing the cat. Your mother visits more often now, bringing gifts and advice. She teaches you how to hold a fan, how to compliment a bishop, and how to pretend you're interested in embroidery. You try. You really do. But the needle keeps pricking your fingers, and the thread tangles like it's plotting against you. Your father remains distant, but occasionally invites you to court gatherings. You sit beside him on a high-backed chair, your feet dangling, your hands folded. You listen to debates about land, taxes, and alliances. You don't understand most of it, but you learn to nod at the right moments. One time, you asked why the Duke's hat looked like a pastry. Your father laughed. You treasure that memory. You're also beginning to notice the surveillance. Servants whisper about your behavior. Courtiers comment on your posture. Your governess keeps a journal of your moods, meals, and mistakes. You're watched constantly, and not just for safety. Every gesture you make is interpreted, recorded, and occasionally reported. You're learning to perform even when you're alone. Despite all this, you find moments of joy. You sneak sweets from the kitchen. You dance when no one's looking. You tell stories to the cat, who listens with admirable patience. You imagine escaping the castle, riding a dragon, or living in a cottage with no lessons and unlimited porridge. These dreams are your secret rebellion. One day, a traveling monk visits the castle and tells stories of faraway lands. You sit on a cushion, wide-eyed, as he describes deserts, jungles, and cities made of glass. You ask if princesses live there too. He smiles and says, "Not like you." You're not sure what that means, but it stays with you. And so your childhood unfolds in a tapestry of rituals, lessons, and quiet resistance. You're cherished, yes, but also curated. Every moment is a performance. Every smile a symbol. You're not just growing, you're being sculpted.
You're 5 now, maybe 6, and the castle feels both enormous and claustrophobic. You know its corridors, its creaking doors, the way the light slants through the chapel windows in the morning. You know which steps are uneven, which tapestries hide alcoves, and which servants will sneak you candied almonds if you ask sweetly. But you also know you're never truly alone. Eyes follow you everywhere. Your lessons intensify. You're no longer just learning to sit straight and smile. You're absorbing the architecture of power. Your governess introduces you to the concept of lineage. You trace your family tree with a quill, learning which ancestors were saints, which were warriors, and which were disappointments. You're told you must honor the first 2 and never become the 3rd. You're taught to recognize coats of arms,
to recite the names of neighboring kingdoms, and to understand the difference between a baron and a viscount. You don't care much for viscounts, but you memorize their titles anyway. Historians still argue whether noble children truly grasped the politics they were fed, or simply learned to repeat them like nursery rhymes. You're somewhere in between. Your governess begins to test your memory. She holds up a carved token and asks, "Which house does this belong to?" You answer correctly. She nods. You feel proud. Then she asks, "What does that house want from ours?" You hesitate. She frowns. You learn that knowledge isn't just about names, it's about motives. Your daily schedule is relentless. Morning prayers, followed by Latin recitation, then etiquette drills, then embroidery, then music, then a supervised walk in the garden. You're allowed to play, but only in ways that reinforce your training. You pretend to host a feast, to negotiate a treaty, to bless a relic. You're not just playing, you're rehearsing. Your governess introduces you to the concept of grace under pressure. You're taught to smile when insulted, to curtsy when ignored, to compliment someone who's clearly lying. You practice these skills with visiting nobles who test you like you're a chess piece. One compliments your gown, then asks if you know how to dance. You do. You perform a slow, deliberate pavane while your governess watches like a hawk. You're also learning to read people. You notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. You sense when a compliment is really a warning. You begin to understand that court life is a game, and you're expected to play it well. One fringe theory suggests that royal children developed heightened emotional intelligence from constant exposure to adult manipulation. You're starting to believe it. Your chamber is no longer just a nursery. It's a classroom, a stage, a sanctuary. The tapestries now depict scenes of diplomacy and virtue. Your books include tales of noble women who saved kingdoms with their wisdom and patience. You're told these are your role models. You secretly prefer the story of the princess who ran away to become a pirate. Your mother begins to involve you in her own routines. You sit beside her during embroidery sessions, listening to court gossip and subtle strategy. She teaches you how to compliment without flattery, how to disagree without offense, and how to pretend you're not bored when someone drones on about brain taxes. You learn that silence can be powerful. Your father invites you to more court gatherings. You sit quietly, observing the flow of conversation, the way alliances shift with a single toast. You're praised for your poise, your attentiveness, your resemblance to your great aunt who once brokered peace between two warring duchies. You smile, you nod, you dream of climbing trees. You begin to understand your future. You're not just a daughter, you're a diplomatic asset. Your marriage will be a transaction, your body a vessel for heirs, your presence a symbol of alliance. You don't fully grasp the implications, but you feel the weight.
It settles in your chest like a stone. Despite all this, you find moments of rebellion. You write secret poems in the margins of your prayer book. You hide a frog in your governess's slipper. You sneak into the kitchen and eat honey with your fingers. These acts are small, silly, and deeply satisfying. They remind you that you're still a child. One day, a traveling scholar visits the castle and tells tales of women who ruled in their own right, queens who led armies, negotiated treaties, and defied expectations. You listen, wide-eyed, and ask, "Could I do that?" He hesitates and then says, "Perhaps." You treasured that word. Your governess catches you daydreaming and scolds you. "A princess must be present," she says. You nod, but your mind drifts to the pirate princess again. You imagine sailing away, wearing trousers, eating mangoes, and never curtsying again. And so, your childhood continues, structured, scrutinized, and slowly shifting. You're no longer just a symbol. You're becoming a performer, a student, a strategist. You're learning that power isn't just inherited, it's practiced. You're 7 now, and the castle feels smaller. Not because it's shrinking, but because your world is expanding. You're allowed into more rooms, more conversations, more ceremonies. You're no longer the baby everyone cooed over. You're the young princess everyone watches, judges, and occasionally parades like a prized falcon. Your wardrobe changes. Gone are the soft woolen gowns and embroidered slippers. Now you wear structured bodices, stiff collars, and sleeves so long they drag behind you like banners. You're dressed in teal and saffron, russet and indigo, colors chosen not for your taste, but for their symbolism. Teal for wisdom, saffron for purity, russet for humility. You feel like a walking sermon. Your hair is styled daily, often braided into elaborate patterns that tug at your scalp. A lady-in-waiting applies rose oil to tame the frizz, then weaves ribbons through the strands. You sit still, trying not to wince. One fringe belief claims that tight braiding improves discipline. You suspect it just improves headaches. You're expected to attend court functions now, not just as a guest, but as a participant. You sit beside your mother, hands folded, posture perfect. You listen to debates about land disputes, grain shortages, and marriage negotiations. You don't understand everything, but you understand enough to know that you're part of the conversation, even when you're silent. Your smile becomes a tool. You learn when to flash it, when to soften it, when to let it fade into thoughtful neutrality. You're praised for your grace, your poise, your ability to sit through a 3-hour sermon without fidgeting. You're also praised for your silence. She knows when to hold her tongue, someone says. You're not sure if that's a compliment or a warning. You're introduced to the concept of courtly love. Poets recite verses about noble ladies and gallant knights, about longing glances and secret tokens. You're told these stories are romantic, but they mostly sound exhausting. You wonder if anyone ever just liked someone without writing a sonnet about it. Your governess begins teaching you diplomacy. You learn how to compliment someone's embroidery,
while subtly criticizing their politics. You learn how to nod without agreeing, how to ask questions that reveal more than they conceal. You practice these skills with visiting nobles, who test you like you're a chess piece. One asks if you enjoy music. You reply, only when it's sincere. He blinks. Your governess beams. You're also learning about marriage. Not in the birds and bees sense, no one's brave enough for that yet, but in the political sense. You're told that your future husband will be chosen for you, that your wedding will be a treaty, that your body will be a bridge between kingdoms. You nod, but inside you scream. Historians still argue whether medieval princesses understood the full implications of their betrothals. Some say they were groomed from birth to accept it. Others say they resisted in quiet, clever ways. You're already planning your resistance. Poems, locked doors, maybe a fake illness. Your daily routine is relentless. Morning prayers, followed by Latin recitation, then etiquette drills, then embroidery, then music, then a supervised walk in the garden. You're allowed to play, but only in ways that reinforce your training. You pretend to host a feast, to negotiate a treaty, to bless a relic. You're not just playing, you're rehearsing.
Your chamber is no longer just a nursery. It's a classroom, a stage, a sanctuary. The tapestries now depict scenes of diplomacy and virtue. Your books include tales of noble women who saved kingdoms with their wisdom and patience. You're told these are your role models. You secretly prefer the story of the princess who ran away to become a pirate. Your mother begins to involve you in her own routines. You sit beside her during embroidery sessions, listening to court gossip and subtle strategy. She teaches you how to compliment without flattery, how to disagree without offense, and how to pretend you're not bored when someone drones on about grain taxes. You learn that silence can be powerful. Your father invites you to more court gatherings. You sit quietly, observing the flow of conversation, the way alliances shift with a single toast. You're praised for your poise, your attentiveness, your resemblance to your great aunt who once brokered peace between two warring duchies. You smile, you nod, you dream of climbing trees. You begin to understand your future. You're not just a daughter, you're a diplomatic asset. Your marriage will be a transaction, your body a vessel for heirs, your presence a symbol of alliance. You don't fully grasp the implications, but you feel the weight. It settles in your chest like a stone. Despite all this, you find moments of rebellion. You write secret poems in the margins of your prayer book. You hide a frog in your governess's slipper. You sneak into the kitchen and eat honey with your fingers. These acts are small, silly, and deeply satisfying. They remind you that you're still a child. One day, a traveling scholar visits the castle and tells tales of women who ruled in their own right. Queens who led armies, negotiated treaties, and defied expectations. You listen wide-eyed and ask, "Could I do that?" He hesitates, then says, "Perhaps." You treasure that word. Your governess catches you daydreaming and scolds you. A princess must be present, she says. You nod, but your mind drifts to the pirate princess again. You imagine sailing away, wearing trousers, eating mangoes, and never curtsying again. And so your childhood continues, structured, scrutinized, and slowly shifting. You're no longer just a symbol. You're becoming a performer, a student, a strategist. You're learning that power isn't just inherited, it's practiced.
You're 8 now, and the castle's walls feel closer than ever. You're not just growing, you're being shaped. Every lesson, every gesture, every word you speak is part of a larger plan. You're being groomed for marriage, and the process is as subtle as it is relentless. Your governess begins referring to you as a young lady, which feels both flattering and ominous. You're no longer allowed to run in the halls, laugh too loudly, or eat with your fingers. You're taught to glide, not walk, to speak, not chatter, to smile, not grin. Your childhood is being folded neatly into a corset of expectations. Your education shifts. Latin remains, but now it's joined by French and Italian, languages of diplomacy and courtship. You practice phrases like, "Your grace honors me," and "May peace reign between our houses." You don't know who you're saying them to yet, but you know it matters. Historians still argue whether royal girls truly mastered these languages or simply memorized key phrases. You're determined to master them. You're also learning arithmetic, not for trade or taxes, but for dowries. You're taught how to calculate land values, inheritance shares, and the worth of a marriage alliance. You learn that your hand in marriage might be worth a fleet of ships, a province, or a decade of peace. You're not sure how you feel about that. Your governess introduces you to heraldry. You study crests, colors, and symbols, learning which houses are allies, which are rivals, and which are teetering on the edge of scandal. You're told to memorize them, because one day you'll need to recognize your future husband's banner from across a battlefield or a ballroom. Your wardrobe becomes more elaborate. You wear gowns with stiff bodices, jeweled belts, and sleeves so wide they could double as sails. You're dressed in colors that flatter your complexion and signal your status. Indigo for wisdom, saffron for purity, teal for loyalty. You feel like a walking tapestry. Your hair is styled into intricate braids, often adorned with pearls or gold thread. You sit for hours while ladies in waiting twist, pin, and perfume your locks. You're told that beauty is a duty, not a luxury. One fringe belief claims that a princess's hair could influence her marriage prospects. You wonder if cutting it all off would make you unmatchable. You're introduced to the concept of court presentation. You're taught how to enter a room, how to curtsy to different ranks, how to hold a fan and a goblet simultaneously. You rehearse these movements daily, often in front of a mirror framed with gilded lilies. You're told that your first impression could seal a treaty or doom it. Your mother begins to speak to you more candidly. She tells you about her own betrothal, her wedding,
her arrival in a foreign court. She describes the loneliness, the pressure, the constant need to perform. She doesn't cry, but her voice trembles. You listen, wide-eyed, and ask, "Did you love him?" She pauses, then says, "Eventually." Your father becomes more involved. He invites you to council meetings, introduces you to ambassadors, and occasionally asks your opinion on minor matters. You're flattered, but you know it's a test. You answer carefully, choosing words like perhaps, consider, and with respect. He nods. You feel like you've passed. You begin to hear whispers about potential suitors, a young duke in the north, a prince from across the sea, a cousin of a powerful emperor. You're told their ages, their titles, their lands. You're not told their personalities, their dreams, or whether they snore. You wonder if that matters. You're also taught about motherhood, not the biology, but the expectation. You're told that your duty is to bear heirs, to continue the line, to secure the dynasty. You're shown portraits of queens with children at their feet, their faces serene and slightly haunted. You ask, "What if I don't want children?" Your governess gasps. Your mother sighs. Your father frowns. You learn not to ask again. Despite all this, you find moments of joy. You sneak into the garden and chase butterflies. You write poems about clouds and cats. You play queen and jester with your maid, taking turns being ridiculous. These moments are fleeting, but they're yours. One day, a visiting noblewoman tells you, "You're becoming quite the asset." You smile politely, but inside you flinch. You're not a jewel, a treaty, or a chess piece. You're a girl. You're a person. You're trying to remember that. And so your training continues. You're being polished, prepared, and positioned. Your future is being negotiated behind closed doors. You're learning to smile through it, to perform with grace, and to dream in secret.
You're 12 now, and everything is changing. Your body, your role, your future. They're all shifting like sand beneath your velvet slippers. You wake one morning with cramps and confusion, and by evening the castle is buzzing. You've had your first period. You're officially of age. And that means the marriage clock starts ticking. Your governess is prepared. She brings you herbal tonics brewed from mugwort and yarrow, whispers prayers to St. Margaret, and instructs you to rest. You're handed a small pouch of dried lavender to hold against your stomach. It helps a little. Mostly, you feel overwhelmed. Historians still argue whether medieval girls understood menstruation before it happened. You didn't. Not really. Your mother visits with a solemn expression and a carved wooden box. Inside are cloth pads, a silver comb, and a tiny book of prayers. She tells you that you're now a woman, that your body is sacred, and that your duty is clear. You nod, trying not to cry. She hugs you, briefly, tightly, and then leaves. Your chamber is rearranged. The dolls are removed, the tapestries are replaced with scenes of marriage and motherhood. Your books now include guides to household management, childbirth, and saintly queens. You're told to read them carefully.
You do, but you also hide a volume of Arthurian legends beneath your mattress. You need something with dragons. Your wardrobe shifts again. You wear tighter bodices, longer trains, and more jewelry. Your gowns are stitched with pearls, your sleeves lined with fur. You're dressed like a bride, even though no wedding date has been set. You're told it's important to look ready. You feel like a mannequin. Beauty rituals become part of your daily routine. Your skin is scrubbed with rose water and milk. Your eyebrows are plucked into delicate arches. Your teeth are rubbed with sage and salt. You're taught to smile without showing too much gum, to walk with your chin slightly raised, and to never ever sweat. One fringe belief claims that sweating is a sign of weak character. You begin to fear exercise. You're introduced to the concept of courtly allure. You learn how to glance sideways, how to tilt your head, how to laugh softly. You're told that mystery is powerful, that silence can be seductive, that your presence should feel like a poem. You practice in front of a mirror, feeling more like a riddle than a person. Your governess begins discussing suitors in earnest. She lists their titles, their lands, their virtues. You're told which ones are handsome, which ones are clever, which ones are politically advantageous. You're not told which ones are kind. You ask. She hesitates. Kindness is a luxury, she says. You disagree.
Your father hosts a feast in your honor. Nobles gather, musicians play, and you're seated at the center like a jewel on display. You wear a gown of teal velvet, a circlet of gold, and a smile that feels glued to your face. You're complimented, toasted, and subtly evaluated. You feel like livestock. You're also beginning to notice the pressure. Every glance, every comment, every expectation weighs on you. You're told to be graceful, but not too bold, intelligent, but not intimidating, beautiful, but modest. You're walking a tightrope in slippers made of silk and scrutiny. Despite all this, you find moments of rebellion. You write poems about freedom and fire. You sneak into the library and read about queens who ruled alone. You practice swordplay with a broomstick when no one's watching. These acts are small, secret, and deeply satisfying. One day, a visiting nobleboy tries to impress you with a poem. It's terrible. You laugh. He blushes. Your governess scolds you. A princess must not mock, she says. You apologize, but later you rewrite the poem with dragons and send it back anonymously. He never finds out. You treasure that victory. You begin to dream of escape, not from the castle, but from the expectations. You imagine a life where you choose your path, your partner, your purpose. You know it's unlikely, but the dream keeps you warm at night. Your mother begins to speak more openly. She tells you about her miscarriages, her loneliness, her quiet triumphs. She teaches you how to survive in a court that doesn't care about your feelings. She tells you that power comes in whispers, in patience, in knowing when to wait and when to strike. You listen. You learn. And so your adolescence begins, not with freedom, but with performance. You're becoming a bride in waiting,
a diplomatic tool, a symbol of alliance. But beneath the silk and ceremony, you're still you, still dreaming, still resisting, still hoping.
You're 14 now, and the day arrives with trumpets and tension. Your wedding. The one you didn't choose, didn't plan, and barely understand. You're dressed in a gown that weighs more than your childhood, stitched with pearls and political pressure. The hem trails behind you like a treaty. You walk slowly, deliberately, because every step is a statement. The castle is buzzing. Servants rush, nobles whisper, and your governess hovers like a shadow. You're told to smile, to breathe, to remember your lines. You've rehearsed this moment for years, but now that it's here, it feels surreal. Historians still argue whether medieval princesses felt excitement or dread on their wedding day. You feel both, mostly dread. Your groom is older, twice your age, maybe more. He's a prince, a duke, a strategic match. You've met him once, briefly. He complimented your embroidery and asked if you liked falcons. You said yes, even though you're terrified of birds. He smiled. You didn't. The ceremony is long, ornate, and deeply symbolic. A priest blesses your union, invoking saints and relics. You exchange rings, vows, and a glance that feels more like a handshake than a promise. You're told this is the beginning of your real life. You're not sure what that means. After the ceremony, there's a feast. Tables groan with roasted meats, spiced wine, and sugared fruits. Musicians play, dancers twirl, and you sit beside your new husband, smiling until your cheeks ache. You're toasted, praised, and subtly inspected. Everyone wants to see if you look fertile. You try not to think about it. Your gown is changed for the evening, something lighter, more revealing, still uncomfortable. You're led to your new chambers, where rose petals have been scattered and candles flicker like nervous hearts. You're told to lie still, to be brave, to remember your duty. You do. You survive. You don't cry until morning. Your new home is a foreign court. The language is different, the customs unfamiliar, the servants wary. You're introduced to your husband's family, who smile politely and ask if you can sing. You say yes. You sing a hymn. They nod. You're not sure if they're impressed or disappointed. Your role shifts immediately. You're no longer a daughter. You're a wife, a potential mother, a symbol of alliance. You're expected to host, to charm, to produce heirs. You're given a schedule, a staff, and a set of expectations that feel like a cage made of velvet.
Your chambers are grand but cold. The tapestries depict battles and saints you don't recognize. The bed is enormous, the windows narrow, the silence heavy. You miss your old room, your cat, your secret poems, You write new ones, hiding them beneath your mattress like contraband. Your husband is polite, distant, and occasionally kind. He asks about your health, your interests, your opinion on trade routes. You answer carefully, trying to be agreeable without being dull. One fringe belief claims that a princess's wit could influence her husband's policies. You test this theory with a comment about grain tariffs. He laughs. You feel victorious. You begin to navigate court politics. You learn who's trustworthy, who's ambitious, who's dangerous. You attend feasts, ceremonies, and council meetings. You smile, nod, and occasionally speak. Your words are measured, your tone deliberate. You're learning to wield influence like a fan, gracefully, subtly, effectively. You're also learning about power dynamics. You notice how her husband defers to his mother, how the chancellor manipulates meetings, how the servants trade gossip like currency. You begin to collect information, storing it like jewels. You're building a network, quietly, patiently. Your body becomes a topic of conversation. You're watched for signs of pregnancy, given tonics and blessed by priests. You're told to rest, to pray, to hope. You do all three. Nothing happens. You begin to worry. You begin to fear. Despite all this, you find moments of joy. You discover a hidden garden behind the chapel. You befriend a maid who tells scandalous stories. You write poems about birds, freedom, and fire. You laugh, quietly, cautiously, but genuinely. One day, your husband surprises you with a gift, a book of poetry in your native language. You read it cover to cover, then thank him with a smile that feels real. He nods, says nothing, and leaves. You wonder if he's trying. You wonder if you are. And so your marriage begins, not with love, but with strategy. You're learning to adapt, to survive, to influence. You're no longer just a princess. You're a wife, a diplomat, a quiet force in a foreign court. You're 15 now, and the foreign court is no longer strange. It's familiar, but never quite home. You've memorized its rhythms, its rituals, its rivalries. You know which corridors echo, which servants gossip, and which nobles smile with their teeth but not their eyes. You've become fluent in its language, both spoken and unspoken. Your role is clear. You're the princess consort, the diplomatic bridge, the potential mother of heirs. You're expected to be gracious, fertile, and quietly influential. You host dinners, attend masses, and smile through endless ceremonies. You're praised for your poise, your elegance, your ability to remain composed while being subtly insulted. Your husband is distant but civil. He consults you on minor matters, compliments your embroidery, and occasionally asks about your health. You respond politely, never pressing, never demanding. Historians still argue whether royal marriages of the Middle Ages were partnerships or performances. Yours feels like both, on alternating days. You're watched constantly. Your meals are monitored, your sleep tracked, your moods recorded. If you look pale, someone fetches a physician.
If you laugh too loudly, someone whispers. You're expected to be serene, mysterious, and above all, fertile. You're not pregnant yet. Your body becomes a battleground of hope and anxiety. You're given herbal tonics, blessed relics, and whispered prayers. You're told to eat more figs, to sleep on your left side, to avoid cold baths. One fringe belief claims that conception is more likely during thunderstorms. You begin to dread clear skies. Your chambers are filled with symbols of fertility, paintings of mothers, statues of saints, embroidered cushions with blooming flowers. You sit among them, feeling like a seed that refuses to sprout. You begin to wonder if something's wrong. You begin to fear that everyone else wonders too. You're also navigating the court's social labyrinth. You learn which ladies-in-waiting are allies, which are spies, and which are both. You host embroidery circles that double as intelligence briefings. You compliment gowns while gathering information. You smile while calculating motives. You're becoming a strategist. Your mother-in-law is formidable. She watches you with hawk-like precision, praises you in public, and critiques you in private. She tells you that patience is a virtue, that influence is earned, and that heirs are destiny. You nod, smile, and secretly write a poem about dragons eating destiny. Your husband's advisors begin to test you. They ask your opinion on trade, on taxes, on treaties. You answer carefully, weaving diplomacy into every syllable. You're praised for your insight, your tact, your ability to say everything and nothing at once. You're learning the art of courtly ambiguity. You begin to build your own network. You correspond with your mother, your childhood governess, and a few trusted nobles from your homeland. You write in code, using metaphors and riddles. You're gathering allies, planting seeds, preparing for storms. Despite the pressure, you find moments of peace. You walk in the garden at dawn, when the dew is fresh and the world is quiet. You read poetry by candlelight, letting the verses soothe your nerves. You laugh with your maid, who tells you that you snore like a kitten. You treasure that comparison. One day, a visiting scholar tells you about a queen who ruled through letters, who shaped policy with ink and wit. You ask for her name. He says, she was forgotten. You vow not to be. You begin to understand that power isn't always loud. It can be quiet, patient, strategic. It can live in glances, in gestures, in well-timed silences. You're learning to wield it like a needle, precise, subtle, effective. And so, your life in the foreign court continues. You're no longer just a bride. You're a player in a game of influence. You're learning to survive, to adapt, to shape your world. You're not pregnant, but you're powerful. And that, you're starting to realize, might matter more.
You're 16 now, and the pressure to produce an heir has become a quiet roar. It's in the way people greet you, the way they glance at your waistline, the way the priest adds extra blessings to his prayers. You're not just a princess anymore. You're a womb with a crown. Your body is monitored like a sacred relic. Every ache, every shift, every sigh is interpreted. You're given tonics made from fennel, anise, and crushed pearls. You're told to avoid sour foods, loud noises, and stressful thoughts. One fringe belief claims that staring at beautiful objects increases fertility. You spend hours gazing at tapestries, wondering if they're working. You conceive. The court rejoices. Bells ring, servants weep, and your husband smiles for the first time in weeks. You're praised, pampered, and placed under strict supervision. Your meals are curated, your walks timed, your sleep enforced. You're treated like glass, precious, fragile, and terrifyingly breakable. You miscarry. The silence afterward is deafening. No bells, no tears, no smiles. Just quiet condolences and subtle shifts in tone. You're told it's common, that many women experience it, that you'll try again. You nod, but inside you shatter. Historians still argue whether medieval courts truly supported grieving mothers or simply moved on. Yours moves on. You're given more tonics, more prayers, more pressure. You conceive again. You miscarry again. The cycle repeats. Hope, celebration, loss, silence. Each time your status erodes a little more. You're still a princess, still a wife, but now you're also a disappointment. Your husband grows distant. He speaks less, smiles less, spends more time with his advisors. You're not blamed outright, but the implication hangs in the air like incense. You begin to wonder if you're cursed. You begin to wonder if they wonder too. Your mother-in-law becomes colder. She stops visiting your chambers, stops offering advice, stops pretending to care. You're left with your maid, your books, and your thoughts. You write poems about winter, about silence, about invisible wounds. You hide them beneath your mattress.
Your chamber is rearranged again. The fertility symbols are removed, replaced with icons of patience and endurance. You're told to pray more, to speak less, to accept your fate. You do, but only on the surface. Inside, you begin to burn. You start attending council meetings again. You speak softly, but with purpose. You suggest trade routes, question tax policies, propose alliances. You're praised for your insight, your diplomacy, your ability to remain composed. You're no longer just a wife. You're becoming an advisor. You begin to mentor younger ladies in waiting. You teach them how to navigate court politics, how to smile strategically, how to survive disappointment. You tell them that power comes in many forms. They listen. They learn. You feel useful. One day, a visiting noblewoman tells you, "You're stronger than you look." You smile. You know.
You've survived loss, silence, and scrutiny. You've learned to wield influence without heirs, to shape policy without power, to endure without applause. You begin to redefine your role. You're not the mother of princes, but you're the architect of alliances. You're not the bearer of heirs, but you're the bearer of ideas. You're carving out a space that wasn't meant for you and filling it with purpose. Despite everything, you find moments of warmth. A joke shared over embroidery, a letter from your mother, a sunrise that paints your chamber in gold. These moments remind you that life isn't just duty, it's also beauty. And so, you continue. You're no longer just a princess, a bride, a disappointment. You're a survivor, a strategist, a quiet force. You've lost much, but you've gained something rare, resilience. And that, you're starting to realize, is its own kind of legacy.
You're 17 now, and the whispers have grown louder. You've failed to produce an heir, and in a court obsessed with lineage, that failure echoes through every corridor. You're still addressed with respect, still seated beside your husband, still dressed in velvet and pearls, but the warmth has faded. You're a winter sun, visible, but no longer warming. Your miscarriages are no longer spoken of directly. They're referred to as unfortunate turns, quiet seasons, or simply not mentioned at all. You're expected to smile, to host, to perform. You do, but each smile feels thinner, each gesture more rehearsed. Historians still argue whether noble women internalized this pressure or resisted it in private. You do both. Your husband grows colder. He speaks to you only when necessary, and even then his tone is clipped. You hear rumors of his meetings with advisors, of discussions about annulments, of quiet inquiries into your health. You're not surprised. You're just tired. Your chamber becomes your refuge. You surround yourself with books, letters, and quiet rituals. You light candles for lost children, write poems about invisible grief, and stitch sunflowers into your embroidery. One fringe belief claims that sunflowers bring fertility. You stitch them anyway. They make you feel less alone. You begin to notice the court's shifting dynamics. Ladies who once curtsied deeply now nod politely. Servants who once lingered now hurry past. You're still a princess, but your influence is waning. You respond by becoming sharper, more strategic, more deliberate. You're not fading, you're evolving. You start hosting salons, small gatherings of thinkers, poets, and diplomats. You discuss philosophy, politics, and the art of survival. You ask questions that reveal truths, offer insights that shift opinions, and build alliances that bypass traditional power structures. You're no longer just a wife, you're a quiet architect. Your mother writes to you often. Her letters are filled with empathy, advice, and reminders of your strength.
She tells you that legacy isn't just about heirs, it's about impact. You read her words by candlelight, letting them settle into your bones like warmth. You begin mentoring younger noble women. You teach them how to navigate court life, how to protect their hearts, how to wield influence without titles. You tell them that power can be quiet, that survival is a skill, and that dignity is a choice. They listen. They bloom.
Your husband's advisors begin to consult you again. They ask for your opinion on trade, diplomacy, and internal affairs. You answer with precision, offering solutions that balance pragmatism with grace. You're praised for your wisdom, your tact, your ability to see the whole board. You smile, knowing you've earned it. You hear rumors of other princesses, some who've been cast aside, some who've disappeared, some who've reinvented themselves. You wonder which path you'll take. You wonder if you've already chosen. One day, a visiting ambassador tells you, "You're the most formidable woman in this court." You thank him, then ask what he wants. He laughs. You don't. You've learned that compliments are often preludes to requests. You begin to understand that your power isn't tied to your womb. It's tied to your mind, your voice, your presence. You're not the mother of heirs, but you're the mother of ideas, of alliances, of quiet revolutions. You're shaping the court in ways no one expected. Despite everything, you find moments of peace. A walk in the garden, a letter from your sister, a poem that makes you cry. These moments remind you that life is still beautiful, still worth savoring, still yours to shape. And so you continue. You're no longer just a princess, a wife, a disappointment. You're a mentor, a strategist, a quiet force. You've lost much, but you've gained something rare, respect. And that, you're starting to realize, is its own kind of legacy.
You're 19 now, and the court is restless. The king is aging, and succession looms like a storm cloud. Your husband, once indifferent, is now ambitious. He wants power, not just influence, but dominion. You watch him maneuver, flatter, and scheme. You know his strengths, you know his weaknesses. You know he underestimates you. You've become a master of observation. You read silences like sonnets, decode glances like riddles, and interpret gestures like maps. You know who's loyal, who's opportunistic, who's dangerous. You keep your knowledge close, like a dagger hidden in silk. Your salons have grown. Diplomats seek your counsel. Scholars quote your insights. Young nobles mimic your mannerisms. You've become a symbol, not of fertility, but of intellect, resilience, and quiet rebellion. You never asked for this role. You earned it. Your husband begins to resent your influence. He accuses you of meddling, of overstepping, of undermining him. You respond with calm precision. I serve the crown, as do you. He doesn't argue. He just leaves the room. You begin corresponding with foreign courts, carefully, discreetly, brilliantly. You build bridges across borders, whispering ideas that ripple through kingdoms. You're not plotting treason, you're planting seeds. Seeds of diplomacy, of reform, of possibility. One night, your husband confronts you. He's angry, drunk, and desperate. You think you're better than me, he spits. You look at him not with contempt, but with clarity. No, you say, I think I'm different. He doesn't understand. He never will.
The queen falls ill. The court mourns, but also recalibrates. Power is shifting. You feel it in the air, in the glances, in the sudden urgency of whispered conversations. You don't mourn publicly. You mourn privately, with ink, with silence, with resolve. You're offered a position, unofficial but influential, advisor to the crown. You accept, knowing it will provoke your husband, threaten your rivals, and redefine your legacy. You don't care. You're done waiting for permission. You begin shaping policy, trade routes, education reforms, diplomatic strategies. You're meticulous, visionary, and unapologetic. Some call you dangerous. Others call you necessary. You don't correct either. Your husband tries to sabotage you. He spreads rumors, questions your loyalty, undermines your decisions. You respond with results. Tangible, undeniable, transformative results. The court begins to see the difference between ambition and competence. You're 20 now. You've survived miscarriages, isolation, political games, and personal betrayals. You've built something rare, a reputation rooted in merit. You're no longer defined by what you couldn't produce. You're defined by what you did. One evening, a young noblewoman asks you, "How did you survive?" You think for a moment, then say, "I stopped trying to be what they wanted. I became what they needed." She nods. She understands. You walk through the palace gardens, the same paths you once wandered in grief. Now you walk with purpose. You're not just surviving, you're leading, quietly, brilliantly, irrevocably. And somewhere, deep within you, a new kind of hope begins to bloom. Not for heirs, but for impact. Not for legacy through blood, but legacy through change. You smile. You've become the storm.
You're 22, and the kingdom is changing. The old king has died, and your husband now wears the crown. You stand beside him at the coronation, draped in gold and garnets, your face serene, your mind sharp. The crowd cheers, but you hear the undercurrent: expectation, fear, ambition. You know this moment is not just his, it's yours too. Your husband is no longer indifferent. He's calculating, restless, and increasingly paranoid. Power has made him bold, but not wise.
He surrounds himself with flatterers and sycophants, dismissing seasoned advisers in favor of loyal fools. You watch, you listen, you wait. You are queen now. The title is ceremonial, but your influence is not. You've built networks across the court, across borders, across ideologies. You speak in coded language, in gestures, in silences. You are fluent in diplomacy, fluent in survival. Your husband begins to falter. His policies are erratic, his temper unpredictable. The court whispers of instability, of misrule, of quiet alternatives. You do not speak against him, but you do not defend him either. You let the silence speak. You begin hosting private councils, trusted nobles, foreign envoys, reformers. You discuss governance, justice, education. You propose ideas that balance tradition with progress. You are careful, deliberate, and persuasive. You are building something beneath the surface. One night, your husband accuses you of conspiracy. You do not flinch. I conspire only for the good of the realm, you say. He stares at you, unsure whether to fear you or admire you. You leave before he decides. You take in a ward, a young girl from a noble family, bright and curious. You teach her languages, history, strategy. You see yourself in her, the hunger for knowledge, the quiet defiance, the fire beneath the surface. You tell her, they will try to define you. Don't let them. She nods. She's learning.
Your writings have spread, anonymous still, but unmistakable. They are quoted in foreign courts, debated in universities, feared by tyrants. You've become a ghostwriter of reform, a phantom of progress. You smile, knowing that your voice echoes louder than any title. Your husband's health declines. He grows erratic, paranoid, cruel. You shield the court from his worst impulses, redirect decisions, soften decrees. You are not the ruler, but you are the reason the realm still stands. The people begin to speak your name with reverence, not as queen, but as guardian, as steward, as the mind behind the throne. You do not seek their praise, but you do not reject it. You know the power of perception. You begin preparing for succession, not through heirs, but through ideas. You mentor, you write, you build. You ensure that when your husband falls, the kingdom will not. You are planting a future that does not depend on bloodlines. One evening, your ward asks, will they ever know what you've done? You smile. Some will, most won't, but the kingdom will feel it. That's enough. You're 25 now. You've outlived expectations, rewritten roles, and reshaped power. You are not the queen they wanted. You are the queen they needed. And when history writes of this era, it may not name you outright, but it will bear your fingerprints in laws, in letters, in lives changed. You walk through the palace, no longer a shadow, no longer a symbol. You are a force, quiet, relentless, enduring.
You're 28, and the realm is on the edge of transformation. Your husband, the king, is ailing, his body weakened by years of indulgence and paranoia, his mind clouded by fear. The court is tense, the nobles restless. Everyone is watching you now, not him. You've become the center of gravity. Ministers seek your counsel before making decisions. Generals wait for your nod before moving troops. Foreign dignitaries request audiences with you, not the king. You never claim authority, but you wield it with precision. Your ward is grown now, a young woman of formidable intellect and quiet strength. She walks beside you in court, listens in council, speaks with clarity. You've shaped her not as a successor, but as a mirror, someone who can carry forward the values you've embedded in the bones of the kingdom. You begin drafting a charter. It's not a revolution, it's a recalibration. Rights for commoners, limits on royal decrees, protections for scholars, artists, and dissenters. You circulated quietly, gathering support, refining language, building momentum. You know it's risky. You know it's necessary. Your husband tries to block it. He calls it treason. You call it evolution. The court sides with you, not loudly, but unmistakably. The tide has turned. One night he summons you. He's pale, trembling, desperate. "You've taken everything from me," he says. You look at him, not with anger, but with truth. "You gave it away," you reply. He weeps. You do not. He dies within the month. The court mourns, but the kingdom exhales. You do not wear black. You wear deep blue, the color of wisdom, of depth, of quiet power. You stand before the council, not as widow, but as architect. The succession is uncertain. There is no heir, but there is you. You do not claim the throne. You claim the future. You propose a council-led monarchy, guided by law, balanced by voices. You offer stability, vision, and continuity. The nobles vote, the people cheer, the realm shifts. You are named regent, not queen, not ruler, but steward of the realm. You accept with grace, with resolve, with the quiet fire that has always burned beneath your skin. You govern with clarity. You reform education, expand trade, protect the vulnerable. You elevate thinkers, empower women, challenge dogma. You do not seek glory. You seek progress. Your writings are no longer anonymous. They are studied, celebrated, debated. You are called philosopher, reformer, visionary. You smile, knowing you were once dismissed as barren. You're 30 now. The kingdom is thriving. The court is vibrant. The people are hopeful. You walk through the palace gardens, the same paths you once wandered in grief. Now they bloom with sunflowers. Your ward walks beside you. "What now?" she asks. You look at the horizon. "Now," you say, "we build what lasts." And so you do. You are no longer the girl who was married at 14. You are no longer the wife who failed to produce an heir. You are no longer the queen who stood beside a crumbling king. You are the woman who redefined power. You are the legacy.
You're 33,
and the realm is no longer merely surviving, it's flourishing. The reforms you initiated have taken root. Education is no longer a privilege of the elite. Girls read beside boys in sunlit classrooms. Trade flows through ports once stagnant. Artists paint with boldness. Philosophers speak without fear. You've turned a kingdom into a canvas. You are still regent, but the title has become symbolic. You are the pulse of the realm, the quiet rhythm behind every decision. You've trained others to lead, to question, to imagine. You have made yourself dispensable, and in doing so, indispensable. Your ward now chairs the council. She speaks with conviction, listens with empathy, and governs with grace. You watch her with pride, not possession. She is not your heir. She is your echo. You begin to withdraw from court life, not in retreat, but in transition. You travel the countryside, visiting schools, libraries, farms. You speak with villagers, scribes, midwives. You listen, you learn. You remind yourself that power is not held in palaces, it lives in people. You write your memoirs, not a chronicle of titles and treaties, but a tapestry of moments. The first miscarriage, the first poem, the first time you realized silence could be louder than speech. You write for the girl you were, and for the girls who will come after. You receive letters from foreign rulers. They ask your advice, offer alliances, send gifts. You respond with candor and caution. You've learned that admiration is often a prelude to ambition. You remain vigilant. One day, a statue is unveiled in the capital. It's not of you, but of a sunflower. Beneath it, an inscription. She taught us to turn toward light. You visit it quietly at dawn. You do not cry. You simply stand, letting the morning sun warm your face. You're 36 now. The realm no longer needs you, but it remembers you. Children study your writings. Scholars debate your policies. Artists paint you not as queen, but as thinker. You are myth and memory, flesh and philosophy. You live in a small estate now, surrounded by books, gardens, and quiet. You host gatherings of young minds, encouraging questions, challenging assumptions. You do not lecture, you converse. One evening, a young girl asks, "Were you ever afraid?" You smile. "Often," you say. But fear is not the end. It's the beginning of courage. You walk through your garden, where sunflowers bloom in every direction. You think of the girl you were, the queen you became, the legacy you shaped. You think of the kingdom not as a place, but as a possibility. And you know, with quiet certainty, that you did not need a crown to rule. You needed only a voice and the will to use it.
You're 40 now, and the world has changed around you. The kingdom you once feared would collapse under the weight of tradition now stands taller than ever, its foundations strengthened by ideas, not heirs. You are no longer regent, no longer ruler, no longer even a public figure. But your name is spoken with reverence, your story taught in every school, your words etched into the laws of the land. You live quietly, surrounded by sunflowers and silence. The palace is a memory. Your estate is a sanctuary. You rise with the sun, read until dusk, and walk beneath stars that once felt distant. You are not lonely. You are full. Your ward visits often. She brings news of the realm, of new reforms, of young leaders who quote your writings and cite your strategies. She tells you they call you the mother of the modern kingdom. You laugh softly. I never gave birth, you say, but I did raise something. One morning you wake with a heaviness in your chest, not pain, but presence. You know your time is near. You do not fear it. You've lived many lives in one: child bride, grieving wife, strategist, reformer, mentor, myth. You've shaped a world that will outlive you. You write one final letter, not to the court, not to the council, but to the girls who will come after. You write, they will tell you what you cannot do. Smile politely, then do it anyway. They will measure you by your womb, your beauty, your silence. Redefine the scale. Power is not loud. It is deliberate. Legacy is not inherited. It is built. You are not a vessel. You are a voice. Speak. You seal the letter, place it beneath your favorite book, and walk into the garden. The sunflowers turn toward you as if in recognition. You sit among them, letting the breeze carry your breath, your story, your final silence. When the kingdom learns of your passing, bells toll not in mourning, but in gratitude. The council declares a day of reflection. Schools read your writings aloud. Artists paint you not as queen, but as light. And in the capital, beneath the sunflower statue, a new inscription is carved. She ruled without a throne. She led without command. She changed everything. You are gone, but you are everywhere.